Welcome to the first chapter of Public Speaking and Presentation Skills course. This is Trishna here from Tripti Coaching Center. In the last introduction, we had spoken about being able to express one's self as a voice, and the fact that if one wants to do this public speaking or workshops, one has something to say. Now, why is this important? If we look back at all the experiences we have had, think back from the time that you were a child to a teenager to an adult, and see how you come across when you talk about something that you're not sure of, you don't know, you do not understand. If you remember that question that your teacher has asked you in a classroom and you didn't know the answer to, or you were unsure of, just try and observe yourself in that moment and see how your body language was, how your tone of voice was, how your articulation was, the kind of influence you were able to create just in your teacher, if not nobody else, and see how that entire thing comes across to yourself and to other people. On the contrast, think about a situation where you knew the answer. You're talking about something that you're very, very passionate about. It could be in an informal situation, it could be in a formal situation, whatever it may be. And similarly, observe your body language in that situation, your tone of voice, the authority that you carry, the influence that you create on another person, and the response you actually beget from them, and thus lies the difference. Therefore, the one key to put in place is having something to say. And when you have something to say, it needs to be a subject matter that you know, that you're very, very sure of, and you're very clear of, under no uncertain terms. Right? So if that is something that you have, then you're ready to go. If you don't have that, you can also pick up a topic that you are very interested in, you're very passionate about, learn a bit about it, and talk about something that you feel very, very enthused about. Now, the secret here is that however you feel about that particular topic, or wherever your standards and whatever your attitudes are about whatever it is that you're going to be talking about, and the experiences that you have on a deeper level, this is what is going to come across to your audience even without you as a speaker realizing. And therefore, it is just a given and a best practice, if you will, to go with that. Having said this, it does not mean that you are going to be super confident about topic that you're passionate about. Could be, may not be. It's okay if you fail, once in a while. If you're a person like me who had stage fear when they were younger, even if it is a topic that you've learned everything, you have practiced, and you're perfect, and you still may get nervous on stage, and that can come in the way of an optimal performance, which is fine. Having said that, that is just going to be like 5 to 10% of your battle, versus if you're talking about something that you don't know, you're not sure about, or you're talking for the sake of talking, or if you are looking at taking instead of giving. If you're looking at getting admiration, you're looking at being the best speaker, or if any of those intentions are coming from a space of getting something from the audience, then that might be a problem as well. This is not something that we spoke about in the intro, but it is a good, important thing to talk about over here. Now, before we get into what conceptualization actually is, the first thing to really, really determine is what is it that you want to give. And giving can be very transactional, which can be just in that moment, or it can be something that is larger part of your life, and this one instance gives you an opportunity to share something that you've always wanted to share. So let's go back to the baking idea. Say you're a baker and you're really, really passionate about baking, and you want to share that passion with as many people as possible, because there are so many wonderful things that you've discovered about baking. So when you get this opportunity to give this 30-minute talk about baking and the new techniques that you have discovered, like 5 new techniques about baking bread that just makes the bread fantastic and better than any other bread that's available on the in the world, you have a concept or an idea that you're going to share. So, what you're wanting to give there is the passion for baking. That's your true giving. But when you go on stage, you're not going to be saying, I'm passionate about baking. You have to be passionate about baking. And therefore, we all need to be passionate about baking. I mean, when I'm talking about it, you know what the impact of that is. But if you get into actually sharing about uh, sharing in a contextual way, sharing in a way that it is relevant to the audience that is present there, then that really, really makes a difference. So let's break that down and go forward. So to start off with, be very, very clear about where your giving is coming from, whether it is transactional or whether it is more pervasive. This is an example of a pervasive sense of giving, and that gives one opportunity for you to share your passion for baking. Usually, giving is pervasive. It is very rare that it's just transactional. Usually, transactional giving creates less impact in the sense that it might just be a piece of knowledge or something that you've read anywhere. It The impact itself is less. So, how do you really measure impact? What does impact really mean? It can create, or you can create an impact about something in other people if it has impacted you. It's as simple as that. If something has impacted you deeply, if it has changed your life, if it has changed your thinking, it's changed your perspective, it's changed your knowledge, it has empowered you in some way, whatever that it may be for you, that is the impact that you could possibly create in other people, because that is what you know. So that's how this thing entirely works. Before we dive into the concept itself, it's important to determine the context in which we are presenting this. So, what does a context mean? Context means who's your audience, where are they coming from, what is their background, what is their age group, what are they looking for. Now there are two things over here in terms of what are they looking for. Just like you have a pervasive need to give, an audience will be in a position where they're in a pervasive space to receive, which means that they have a need. Now a person, for example, maybe somebody who's wanting to become a chef in baking and they want to learn all about baking and they're going to all kinds of courses and seminars and they're trying out new things. There might be another person who wants to take up baking as a hobby. There might be another person who's looking at getting approval from his or her family, and that's why they're taking up baking, and somehow baking gives them a way to get that done. So needs can be varied, but the fact that all of these needs are coinciding on baking, and somehow this audience is seeing baking as a medium for them to fulfill their needs. So that's where it is coming from. When it comes to expectations is a perception that a person has. So if they're going to come to your talk, they might have an expectation of what the talk will do. So if you're saying there are 5 fantastic techniques of baking, they might assume that once they hear you out, they can go back home and suddenly their baking transforms into this amazing uh, baking possibility where they are experts and they're able to do it in the most amazing way, which may be unrealistic because you are aware that these techniques need a lot of practice, and without practice one may not be able to nail it down. So that is where setting expectations comes into play. Usually it's a good practice to set expectations right in the beginning. This just means that being able to take what people are thinking that they expect to receive and what they are able to do with what they have received, because they're motivated to be there. They're spending half an hour of their time listening to you. So obviously they're looking at taking something away from that, and that's where setting expectations really makes a huge difference. Now, when it comes to your talk, please always remember that your talk needs to meet people's needs in full or in part at all times. And when this happens, that is when the talk is relevant. So that's where purpose comes into play, right? So when you're looking at why you are doing this particular talk, so you've said you wanted to give, then you have people who have this need to learn baking and they're at various levels and they're coming to hear you. So the purpose of this talk is to educate people of 5 amazing techniques to make bread in a new way. And that would be a purpose somewhere. Purpose is generally more generalized. So what I stated just now could be the objective, which actually nails down the specifics. But purpose could be more like sharing new techniques in the baking field as far as bread is concerned. So purpose is more generalized. It can be worked around with various ways of doing it. Now, if you're doing techniques of baking, it could be bread, it could be pastry, it could be some other baking commodity. That could be one way to go. Or it could be about general baking tips where you have do a certain kind of a prep which is more general, and that actually makes a difference. So it can be reinterpreted in many different contexts and many different ways and many different contents as well, and all of this serves the purpose. So for our example, objective would be sharing 5 amazing techniques to bake bread in a new way that makes it special in some way, and that could be the example. And where are you going to do this talk? Is it online, offline? How long are you going to take? So we are, for this purpose, we are looking at 30 minutes. Now, for example, you might decide that you want to actually teach baking, and after a duration of time, people are actually able to get that baking done. They actually pick up their skills, and therefore people who wish to learn baking are able to meet their needs by attending your course, and that is distributed over a period of time. That could work as well. And the most important thing that you don't want to miss out is the number of people who are attending your talk. So when you take all of these things together, that sets the context. That's as far as the audience is concerned. That's the space that you're going to be in. That's the people. All of that is determined when you determine the context. So you have what you're going to give, you have the context in which you're going to give it. Now it is important to nail down specifics. This is on a very general format, so it's given a general outline and a very, very broad and a high level. Now you want to nail down things like topic. We already spoke about the objectives. The objectives translate into takeaways. So after you have delivered your program or your talk or your workshop, at the end of the day, what did the audience take away is very, very important to determine. So this is usually asked for feedback. If you're teaching a skill, then were they able to actually do and produce the result that was desired from having learned that skill? So those would fall under takeaways. So in these instances, you can look at two aspects. If they're learning techniques of baking, did they understand? Did they get new knowledge and new perspective on how to bake differently so that they can get better results than they're already getting? That could be one way. Now, this is at a knowledge level. Knowledge level just means that was your communication clear enough? Did they understand? Were they able to remember and recall? So if you want to do a remember and a recall, maybe you are going to give them some notes as well and not just talk and leave it, because they don't get to take that away. Because as we know, when we hear something, we remember about 20% of the entire thing that we have heard. So that is something that comes into the takeaway. Now, if you're teaching a skill, are they able to make that special bread in the way that you have taught and produce that result over and over again? and that would be their takeaway in that situation, right? So now you have all these things nailed down. Now the thing is, by the time you're done with all of this, concept is fairly clear. So you're actually like fairly clear by this point that you're talking about baking. You're talking about 5 techniques of baking of bread, in terms of specialization, why that is important, and who are the people that can actually benefit from that. Now, who will be sorted at this point in time, because your audience is already in a who, and that is something that has been determined beforehand, right? I know is something that we've spoken about already. So, this portion of it is important for you to consider from your perspective. Are you going to be standing on stage? Are you going to be sitting in front of a computer and talking? If you're on stage, are you going to be sitting? Are you going to be standing? Do you want to be moving around? What kind of a mic you're going to have? So all of those things become really, really important. Once a talk is covered, you have your concept nailed down. What is very, very, very important is that you define what is it that you're going to talk about and what your talk is going to entail, because once you talk about it, people are going to have questions, and if they're going to have questions, they might go pretty much anywhere that they want to, which means that you as a speaker do not have a control on that. How do you mitigate that aspect is that you set a scope for your talk. You actually define very clearly what your talk will include. If there are questions going to be asked, what kind of questions are you going to be able to take, and what are the kind of questions you're not going to be able to take, or aspects that fall out of scope of your talk. So for example, if you're talking about 5 techniques of baking, it is assumed maybe that people already know what baking is, what an oven looks like. They have baked bread before, so they know what it entails. And um, and uh, y- you know various specialities of bread, and that is something that they're familiar with. So you want to ensure that these are things in scope. Now, what is out of scope is this is you teaching people how to make bread from get go, which is from zero, assuming that people don't know how to bake bread at all, and that is something that you're defining as out of scope for this particular thing. Out of scope could be everything else, like, for example, astronomy or biology or physics, and all of these are out of scope. So, if somebody is going to come and talk about biology and they're going to ask you a question about biology in your talk, you're going to contextualize it and say, look, this is about baking, and we're specifically covering these 5 techniques, and that is what this is all about. So, once you've covered all of these aspects, which is what you're going to give. You have set context in place. You have nailed down what your talk is going to be all about. If you're designing a workshop, you can think about that as well. And then what your talk and your workshop is going to cover and what it is not going to cover. So once you have you're thinking through these things, what we would suggest is think through these things on paper, which means write them down. We have a template available. It's there in the description. Please download the template. You can save that in your Google Docs and start writing. I usually think while writing. Both go hand in hand together for me. You could also brainstorm first with yourself and then nail it down. But at the end of the day, please document it so that it is crystallized and we are saying this is what it is. So that's what written documentation actually does. Second thing you want to do is start practicing talking. So get in front of a video and present your concept. Just talk about it. If you want to do a PowerPoint presentation, you could do that as well. It's a little elaborate, but why not, right? It could help you hone your skills that way. Otherwise, if you just want to talk it out, that's great as well. So, record a video. The third thing you want to do is create an invite. There is a website called Canva. If you're not already familiar with it, you can go check it out. It's canva.com, canva.com. The details are in the description. What this will help you do is that it has a lot of amazing, simple, and more complex templates. You can just make a few changes and you have an invite ready that you can send across to people. It can be downloaded as an image. Another way to do it very simply, if you don't want to go through the elaborate aspect of graphics, at least start with just text. Whether it is an email or whether it is a message on WhatsApp or just an SMS, whatever it is, type out a short message which includes a topic, which welcomes people to join, invites people to join, give them the time and the menu and the details, and you're ready with your invite. What you want to do after you're ready with all of this is run that through the person or the group of people that you have selected as your soundboard, and get their inputs and their feedbacks and see what they feel about it. Depends on the profile they have. If they're an expert, they'll give it to you from that standpoint. If they're a layperson, that's great as well. They're going to tell you how they're perceiving things and if something that you're saying is making sense to them or not. And that is very, very important, because you want to be able to communicate to just about anybody. If anybody is not able to understand what you're trying to say, then that is something that definitely needs to be worked upon. Even if you are an expert and you are going to be talking to other experts, always look at it from a perspective that a layperson can understand. Unless it is a technical field and it requires technical presentations, still, we would suggest that try and simplify it as much as possible so that most people can grasp it, and the ability to grasp it is not narrowed down to a few. Some things cannot be avoided, but try and avoid it as much as possible. So that covers our concept and the conceptualization stage. At this stage, you will have a better idea of what you're going to present and why you're going to be presenting that and to whom and where. So these are things that you have a good idea about. This is a very, very high level. At this stage, you're also deciding whether you're going to go ahead with this or not, and that is what you're going to take away from this. So thank you and wish you all the best. See you in the next chapter.